Every so often, a piece of media releases that feels off, like it doesn't belong, like it isn't just a game. The feeling that something darker is hiding beneath the surface, a mystery that should be left buried. Today, I will be going over Rome 0120, a horror game you can find over on itch. The description is cryptic, not giving us much. The creator even says he fears getting in trouble from releasing it, and rather than a huge monologue explaining this game, I think in this case it'll be easier just to show you. But before we get started, I will warn you, the game contains flashing lights in some areas, as well as some pretty disturbing themes. So now is your chance to turn back. We open in the middle of the woods at night, with a lamp in front of us. The scene presumably illuminated by whoever took this picture. Hearing the ambient sounds of the forest with the occasional footstep, I notice there is no menu of any kind. The only thing I can do is drag the cursor around and click on the areas where it expands to both move around and investigate the environment. I click on the bottom of the screen, moving onto a dirt road with a building to the left. Moving right, we end up in a small wooded area. Nothing I can do here though. Moving on, I head towards the building, seeing it as a garage of sorts. We are also presented with arrow keys to change our angle. Doing so, we find a note on the ground that says, "Don't go in," and hid the keys in a bush. Well, at least we have a goal now. I find a door to the right. It's locked, of course. Must be that key I'm looking for. I notice W21 scrawled on the wall, a clue for later I'm sure, and also a sign that reads, "Private property, no entry." If someone does live here, they certainly don't want guests. We go out back, finding another storage area full of tools of all kinds, and notice a large sensor bar on a shelf, being told, "We aren't allowed to see that." When I click on it, could this be gore or just something else the narrator doesn't want us seeing, like personal information? I also find a key in a drawer amongst other junk. My first item, and not the key I was looking for. Tracing my footsteps back, I find another sensor. This time on the back of a cart of some sort. It looks like it might cover a license plate of some kind. And looking inside, yet another sensor. I really wonder what the narrator is hiding from us, and why. Also, before moving on, I want to note just how disheveled this place is. Every room so far has items strewn about everywhere, almost approaching hoarder levels. It does not seem like anyone has been here for a while. I decided to check the garage now that I have the key, soon finding what looks like some circuitry under a car. It's labeled ? Odd. Sifting through piles of junk, I find a potted plant and hair? Carol's hair, to be precise. Who is Carol, and why is her hair here in a pot? I fumble around the outside a bit more, finding a wheelbarrow with a note inside. Arrow password. It also says, "Do not enter if he is around." Who is he? Either way, I write this down for later, and on some more cinder blocks we find a rifle with no magazine. Was this used here at one point, perhaps? I decide to leave it behind. Or more accurately, the narrator decides to leave it behind. I click around for a while before I'm sure I find everything, before moving out back to try and find that bush. First, I found a basketball, noting it smells and is out of place. I look around this area for far too long, the game eventually mocking me for getting lost. Eventually, I find some grass I can click on, and we seem to dig something up. The narrator censors it, but whatever it is unsettles them deeply. I check around the garden for about half an hour before backing my way into a corner, finding that bush and the key. Finally, we can see what's lurking within this building. Before that, however, I do have something else I want to bring up. In the folder for Rome is 6 images, seemingly from this same building. They appear not to hide anything except for well.jpg. Zooming in, you can clearly see a rudimentary map of something called Boy Room and a connecting corridor. This will be important later. That out of the way, I enter, finding another out-of-place ball in front of a door. The floor and walls here look filthy, and our narrator voices his discomfort on opening this door, but does it anyways. Perhaps they are here to do something specific. Looking around, we see the interior is worse than the exterior, with junk and decay everywhere. All kinds of filth and mold covering the walls. Find a large device on the wall that seems to be a controller for a boiler. To the left of it is another device that has Eru on it. So I click around for somewhere to enter that password I found, but I don't find anything. Moving on, I find a room with some kind of large red machine, and a faint humming can be heard coming from it. I notice a paper on the wall. Investigating closer, it seems to be a warning about something called AT waves, saying the device in this room emits waves level 9.3, going on to mention exposure above 7 is dangerous, mentioning several side effects including delirious behavior, unwanted thoughts, and hallucinations. What could anyone possibly be using these AT waves for? Nothing pleasant, I'm certain. Moving into the room, we see the red machine labeled AT, pretty much confirming it generates those AT waves. I look around for a bit before noticing strange effects on screen and hearing static. Must be those waves getting to me. I decide it's early in my playthrough and I can risk seeing what happens here, so I wait. What the hell was that? An effect of the AT waves, I presume? Was that Shadow Man a hallucination then? Most likely. Either way, we come to in a nearly empty room I haven't seen yet. I click on the chair, the only thing in here, and the narrator speaks to us directly. He claims he is losing his mind and memories, mentioning that makes him unreliable. He questions not being able to recognize some boy, even though he was supposedly the one who took his photo. He mentions a program targeting him personally, blasting him with AT waves, hoping it results in his death. He also notes his apartment was ransacked. He even had missing computer files. He laments more about seeming psychotic because he is acting that way, and that's what they want for him, to be unreliable. Ending, he says if they keep blasting me, I'll end up just like him, before we see a large sensor over the chair. Oh boy, that was a lot out of nowhere. So let's go from the top first. He mentions losing his mind and memories. Interesting and worrying. Like he said, it makes him an unreliable narrator. Anything he sees could be a hallucination. And then he mentions a boy, presumably the one that was in or is in the boys' room, possibly who is also mentioned on the Eru note, although we have seen no sign of them except the map in the well. Most interesting, he mentions a program targeting him, most likely whoever ran this facility and experimented with the AT waves. But why target our narrator? Also mentioning his ransacked apartment, the program I assume. Lastly, he mentions if they keep blasting him, he might become like him. Who might he be? I have no idea. Perhaps the boy, if they exist. Letting this sink in, I back up, exiting the room. It takes me to the room with the boiler. Odd. And I can still hear a ringing. Moving on, we find a rec room or a break room of sorts with another sensor bar. I turn on an old TV and leave it on for now, noticing a bottle filled with urine. How nice. As if this place couldn't get any more foul. Find a spot on the wall with multiple sensors and some writing. Looks like EXA? Seems like. I can't do anything here, so I back out. Checking out another one of these sensors, I find a game of sorts, but I appear to be trapped by these exes. The game eventually telling me as much, so I give up for now. Clicking on a rotten, partially collapsed wall, we spot another key, adding it to our collection. Moving into a dingy concrete room, we spot a crib amongst the pile of junk. Looking inside, I find a hat. My habit of spam clicking pays off. After 3 clicks, we hear a baby cry. I assume that did something? I find an old radio under some stairs. It begins playing. It's hard to make out, but it sounds like a man talking about test subjects to me, listing genders and height. The height indicating they might be children, perhaps victims of this program, using AT waves on them for whatever purpose. The tape cuts out and I move on. searching yet another room packed with junk. A door frame rests against the back wall. I can examine it, but nothing else. I find a drawer with strange, erratic drawings, perhaps done by someone under the influence of AT waves. We find another scientific-looking paper, but the text is too small to read. Also, besides the drawer, is 46 plus 5 written on the wall, with something beneath it I can't quite make out. I jot that down for later and move on. Heading upstairs, we find a typewriter, but it appears I can't use it. To the right is another door, and it looks like the locks have been stripped off. There's also some writing, but it is both hard to read and French. Going in, I find perhaps the most junk-filled room so far, boxes piled on boxes, with 2 large sensor bars in the room. Pourquoi, or however it's pronounced, is written across the ceiling. Translates to why, I believe. Whatever the sensors are, the narrator mentions them being highly offensive. I also find another tape to play. Interesting.
So, thinking about psychosis, we can think about some of the experiences, first of all, that characterize psychosis. One of the very common experiences are experiences of paranoia. So thoughts of suspiciousness, paranoia, often unfounded, that somebody or people or organizations are trying to harm you or trick you or hurt you. But think about it for a moment. Think about it. You're on holiday. You're lost. You find yourself in a dark street. You're looking for someone to help you. The only people that you can see are these people who maybe look very shady and very untrustworthy and very dangerous. It kind of makes sense in that context to be paranoid.
A male speaks on psychosis, describing symptoms similar to what the AT waves cause. He then describes being lost, looking for help, and coming across some shady people, going on to justify his paranoia. Could this be our narrator speaking on his own experience? Perhaps. This tape is here because they stole it from his apartment when it was ransacked. Feels like the clues are starting to add up now. Next to the table, we find some more documents on the AT waves. Unfortunately, the text is too small to read again. I find a photo of a young child and a cat. There's a symbol on the bottom right, but other than that, nothing about it strikes me. Stumbling from room to room, not sure where to head next. Eventually, I come across a wire coat hanger I missed. I press on and find an area overlooking a room I haven't been in yet. Nothing to do here, I back out, sifting through yet another junk-filled room. The box is strewn everywhere, making it hard to find anything, until I come across a note. It reads, "We call him the Dweller. Do not move if you meet him. They mostly left because of him, so there is some Dweller entity. And that's why this place is abandoned? Is this the boy or something separate? I'll have to keep this warning in mind." Moving up into the attic, I click on something I don't quite understand what it is, and we get this. I also find some metal object on the ground. Once again, my habit of spam clicking coming in handy as we find some paint. Yet another item, but I still feel just as lost. I retrace my steps, finding a door I had missed. Clicking inserts the coat hanger, but that's not enough it seems. Yet another item we need. Thankfully, what I need is nearby, and what looks like some sort of theater room? With the big red curtains. With every new room, this place gets stranger and stranger. Going back some more, I managed to find the room I could look into from above and check out that sensor. The narrator seems to describe the head of a corpse peeking out from within a garbage bag, crushed beyond recognition. A victim of the program, likely? Maybe even a child based on the recording from earlier. Back at the door with the coat hanger, I used the hook to unlock it, entering a stone corridor with a push door. Without realizing it here, I actually double-click, moving forward twice, missing some stuff, coming to another door wrapped in plastic. I also find another locked door to the side, the rusty key not working on this one. I come to another door with 650 on the front. I write it down and enter the room. The only thing I can do here is move forward, hearing breathing and movement. I step cautiously, assuming it to be that dweller I heard about earlier. Eventually, I get a warning not to move, and I listen. We hear footsteps getting closer and closer before fading away, and we are told we can move again. I spam click out of here, hoping it doesn't happen twice. Finally out, I see a phone trying it just to get the dial tone. Attempting to open the door uses the question mark, question mark, question mark. Oh, glad I grabbed that. There is a paper in here, and the narrator notes the equipment in this room is all for broadcasting. He then laments, "It's pitch black. Many people in some building perishing, and being certain there are many others." So this mysterious program is large enough to have multiple facilities, I guess. And the last line, you claim it was Carol's hair, but can never be certain. Is the narrator here looking for Carol? For now, this line eludes me. Soon I begin to experience the AT wave symptoms again, and against better judgment, I stick around to see what happens. And I'm back in that same room when I blacked out from the AT wave generator. Sadly, the room spits me out in the same place it did last time, forcing me to make my way back to the dark corridor. This time, however, I don't double-click when walking through and notice 2 locked doors I hadn't checked out before. Trying the right door, it works, and I find some strange panel with a map of the boy room and free commands: unlock all doors, and lock corridor. Curious, I hit the first command and unlock all the doors, seeing a white dot rush through the room. Was that the boy? Am I in danger? Is this who I'm not supposed to enter when they're around? Unable to reverse my mistake, I move forward, heading back to the dark corridor, not realizing it's the same corridor depicted on that panel, and what that means. In a terrifying jump scare, we are seemingly killed by the boy, who resembles a monster much more than any boy, and the game closes itself, the harsh realization that I'm starting all over again setting in. So, I restart, now much more cautious knowing I can die, and with no way to save, that's a hard reset every single time I make a mistake. I begin by picking up all the items I had in the previous game: the garage key, question mark, question mark, question mark, Carol's hair, the basement key, rusty key, hook, coat hanger, and the paint. I even found one more item I missed. Right before the dark corridor, a bottle in a small closet. Before moving on, I decided to go back and comb the previous rooms for clues I had missed. First, I found a way to beat that game from earlier. Writing that down, I went back further to the Eru machine. I decided that in lieu of a keypad, I would try using my own keyboard, using the password I found earlier, and it works. It seems here we can lower or raise temperature in the boys' room, adjust the AT levels, and send shocks. Sorry. Not sure if I'm actually affecting anything. I leave this for later. Returning to the room I blacked out in last time, I prepare to investigate. Through a small window in the wall, we see a large fleshy growth, possibly from AT wave experimentation. We also find some stairs on the right side of the room, but are unable to access them for some reason. And here I make another mistake, forgetting that the boys' room along on the map would be the room at the very end of this one. Not realizing this, I foolishly press on, coming to death number 2. Back at the start again, I find myself stuck. The boys' room being one of the last rooms to investigate, apart from some locked doors. Unsure of how to progress, I comb the many screens over, looking for items I missed to no avail. Eventually, I return to the panel that controls the locks on the boys' room. I try to unlock it and relock the corridor before the boy gets there, but he's always too fast. If only I had a way to slow the boy. The Eru machine, perhaps. I restart again, this time making sure to shock the boy along the way and lower the AT waves. This time, it works like a charm. I lure him up into the stairs and proceed down the dark corridor again, into the boys' room, which is actually used for wine storage, it seems. I find an empty bowl we call evidence, and a hammer the narrator says also counts as evidence. Seems like we might be trying to take this program down, perhaps. But the state of this facility suggests anyone who could be held accountable is long gone. There's also a censored area you can click on. The narrator says he thought there would be a wall here, but instead, he finds a tunnel miles long. The way he talks, it sounds like he actually came here once before with a group, but after some tragedy, they disbanded. He talks about losing his mind again, before emphasizing just how long this tunnel is. Makes me wonder just how this program has the resources for this facility and miles-long tunnels. Assuming the tunnel exists, of course. The numerous mentions to losing his mind makes it hard to trust everything our narrator says. Pressing on, I find a TV remote. That appears to be all I can find here. The hammer and the empty bowl I have no idea how to use. The remote, however, I have an idea for. Heading back to the TV, I turn it on. This time there's an L in the static. Thanks to the Eru machine, I know to try my keyboard, and it works. Apparently a gate has opened upstairs? It takes about another half an hour of stumbling around until I finally find it in the corner of the upstairs. A window or portal, maybe, had appeared on the wall. Clicking it, we are transported into the middle of the woods, and all I can do from here is move forward. Eventually, we reach the back of a house. Clicking on an attic window, I get some medication and a code, 47 free S. Heading back to the Eru machine and punching it in, I get a sound indicating it worked. I begin to look around, and it doesn't take long to find something new, coming face to face with some horrific shadow entity. Saying we don't know how many more there are, and about making promises he couldn't keep, before repeating it's all Jolena multiple times. It ends with the creature telling us to get lost in its gaze, before we quite literally get stuck in its gaze. In the middle of me frantically clicking and moving the cursor all around, I happen to notice I can control its eyes by moving and clicking, dragging the mouse down to hold its eyes closed. It works. We escape and end up back at the basement with garden tools in our inventory. Before moving on, I want to talk about what just happened. In particular, when the Shadow Man said, "We don't know how many there are." I assume he can only be referring to either victims of the program or facilities of the program. Either way, it's quite the harrowing thought. Checking around the garage, I notice I can now click on the garden tools from earlier, and they ask us for a password. Makes sense, I guess. I go down the list of all letter-number combos that consist of free, with W21 being the right answer. It now tells us to fry our mind, adding a fryer to our items. It's pretty obvious what I need to do at this point, but we actually can't yet. And I want to bring up something I have neglected to mention so far, and that is soft locks. It is incredibly easy to soft lock yourself in this game. There is a very precise order in which you need to do events and collect items. And doing things out of this order makes the game impossible to beat, forcing a restart. While this is only my third death, it is actually around my 20th game. And to put it lightly, I was stuck and frustrated. There were multiple days I would come home from work, eat, shower, do all my stuff, and then just spend the rest of the time trying to progress in this game to no avail. And it started to wear on me. So, stuck between giving up and looking it up, I looked it up, and after a while I found the one chain of events you need to do to complete the game that I had missed. So apparently you can use the cash you get when beating that game from earlier in 6 different locations. And when you use it at each location, it gives you a combination of like letters and numbers. And when you combine all 6, you get a code for a YouTube video that gives you the final clues. I also tried here to find out whoever first discovered this answer, but unfortunately I couldn't find that. So, if anyone knows that, please do let me know. Alright, first, I need to return to the typewriter and type, "They fled the scene." No spaces. Then, stare at the blue painting. Find the cigarette table and wait 5 seconds. Next step, click on the brick next to the yellow cylinder. Now we go to the room with the garbage bag and look up, clicking on the shadow man. And finally, we need to click on the empty door frame. Doing so, we find ourselves transported to a normal-looking home, but it's eerily quiet. I find a note that reads, "This is how it all started for me. 2005. Finding the doors to the left locked, I investigate the door ahead of me, noticing I can click the light switch next to it. It doesn't do anything yet, but I can't click on it again. I make a mental note to press all the switches in this house before proceeding. Coming into a dining room / kitchen, I see a note on the table. It's in French, but it seems to translate to, "They found a video." Who found a video? And of what? I will keep that in mind for later. I click another, opening the closet. It seems everyone is gone for the moment. No wonder it's so quiet. Find another item in the den. A pawn. Another item with seemingly no use. Noticing it appears to be quite dark out before moving on. Moving up the stairs, I find a fairly small room with no personal items whatsoever. Just some water bottles on a nightstand. Investigating that gets a mess of gibberish, unfortunately. I can't make anything out of this. I find another small room besides this one. This room appears to at least be somewhat more lived in, and I scroll over a small case, not noticing yet I can click on it, checking out the bed instead. Our narrator noting, "So many beds for such a small family." While I have little to go on now, it seems like some sort of tragedy has befallen this family, causing everyone to leave. Failing to find anything, I head back to the entrance, checking out an angle on the kitchen I missed on the way, getting 2 more switches. I proceed upstairs and find a room I can't enter with a large sensor box, hiding things from us even here. Moving on, I find what looks like it could be a young girl's room with a teddy bear in it. There is also a note with a heart, but the text is too small to read. Backing out, we see, "Nothing could ever replace the times we had together." It's starting to feel like this family lost a member, perhaps a young one at that. I find a phone back in the hallway, but it only gets static no matter how long I wait. I enter the room on the right. Seems like a parent's room perhaps, or an older kid maybe. Clicking on the TV, I get many warnings not to watch. Not wanting to reset this late, I heed that warning. I find nothing else of note here except a sensor box on a vanity. Entering the bathroom, the narrator notes the tub hasn't been used in years, and clicking on a radio, we hear sirens, presumably from some sort of emergency workers, like a police or ambulance. I don't hear French sirens very often, so that is my guess, and would further point towards some tragedy happening to this family. I back out, heading up the stairs, coming into what appears to be yet another child's room, and find our biggest clue yet, a missing poster for Carol. With that, I assume Carol was a victim of this program and was taken somehow by them for experimentation. This obviously devastated the family, and years later, one member, a sister maybe, joins the group our narrator was part of to help find her sister, and I guess somehow they got a hold of a video of the facility. From there, I'm unsure of what happens, but we find a lock of Carol's hair during our exploration, which is why I believe this Carol was taken as a child by the program, and we tried to dismantle it, but seem to have failed. Over the bed, we see another missing poster. Moving away and clicking back, the poster is changed to a painting of a deer. Entering the last room, the only thing of note I find being an empty crib. Alright, clearly I missed something. So I meticulously go back for the house, making sure to press every switch I missed. Doing so, I end up back at that small bedroom. Clicking on that case, I find an item I missed, plush with a question mark. Making my way back to Carol's room, we notice the missing poster is now all black, and I can click on it. Doing so, we are stuck in complete darkness, much like the corridor with the dweller. I move on very warily, eventually making my way towards a bench, illuminated by a single streetlight. On the bench is a red cone? We found ourselves back at the basement door with another item. Love, huh? Well, if that little show it gave us is anything to go off, that might just be the most important item in the game. But with that segment that eluded me for so long done, we are finally here in the home stretch. Time to fry our brain. I go to the room with the AT generator and wait. The blackout symptoms start, but this time we skip the blackout room and we get some matches with a hint. Let's play hide and seek. Watch me from above. Hide and seek, is it? We find our target by looking into the empty room with the garbage bag, getting another clue. Stairs, huh? I know 2 sets. The attic stairs, unfortunately, are a bust. The other set almost seemed wrong at first too, but a spot on the wall reveals the shadow man hiding beneath. The next clue, a play from the audience point of view. This one stumped me a bit as I assumed it was in the playroom, but was actually out near the barn door. With that, we get a cartridge. Trying this in the pinball machine we got the cash from, we end up playing some game with awful red flashing lights. Wandering around, I approach a shadow man. You cannot escape the program. You are a target. Does this reference our narrator? I would assume so, especially with what he said earlier on about them targeting him with the AT waves. I wander some more, eventually finding a strange symbol. I touch it, exiting the game with the matchbox. Finally, we can go cut the power, something else I have neglected to bring up for a while, as this damn breaker has soft-locked me more times than anything this game. You really do need to nail the order of this. Cutting the power allows us to access the rooms with the electrified doors, one of which contains an item we need, the emitter. We finally exit the basement, making our way to the gas can. We set the whole thing up in flames, getting the second to last item in the process, the bell. Here being another potential soft lock. If you light this fire without getting any of the items in the basement, you can no longer enter and get them, thus soft locking yourself. But here, after a handful of deaths and many soft locks, I'm ready to get the last item. We head back to where we started, the lamp. With the bell in hand, we can click on it, getting our final item, the gun. Could have maybe just grabbed that rifle from earlier, but whatever, I digress. With this, we can exit through the trees we couldn't act with back in the beginning, and so we do. Walking through the forest, moving further and further away from the facility, we pass a large shed for gathering wood as we go, and it starts to rain, but we press forward through the cold night. Eventually, we reach a gate, the last thing between us and freedom. But before that, a cassette tape on the ground gives us our final insight on what happened here. It reads, "The plan was to raid the basement. We were very underprepared. We had located the building and wanted to act quick. I think somehow they knew we had found out. They knew about our plan, because when we arrived at the scene, the building had been deserted. We then realized how big the place really was. There wasn't just a single boy in a room. There were dozens of other cells, and there was a rotting corpse in every single one of them. We were absolutely devastated. When we got to the last room, the one that had been broadcasted, we came face to face with a humanoid figure. We could barely recognize him. He was rotting, but he was still alive. I didn't know what to do. He didn't look aggressive at first. I was stunned. I didn't say anything. Then Julie entered the room. Alerted by my lack of responses, she saw him crawling on the floor. She freaked out and shot him dead. Every night when I go to sleep, I remember one thing. He wasn't screaming at us. He was screaming in pain. I swear I heard him beg for help. He was begging for help, and we shot him. They decided to leave after this massive failure, but I wish I could have stayed. When we left, I took one last look at him, bleeding to death, and I swear to God I saw him breathe. For years I've wanted to go back, until recently I decided to finally do so. The whole place was abandoned, but it looked so different. The boy was not in the room anymore. I decided to burn this place down, to finally put the memories to rest. But as the flames started to spread, I found a lock of hair in a pot I hadn't checked. The tunnel. I'll feel forever guilty. I'll dismantle the program one day, and that is Rome. Alright, finally, after multiple deaths, many soft locks, all that's left is try and piece this all together. So, the story of Rome, as I understand it, at some point, the AT Wave program was founded, and they began taking children for their experiments, including the boy and Carol. Somehow, the group with our character and Julia found a tape that seemed to depict the broadcast room of the facility. Wasting no time, the group raided the facility in hopes of rescuing the victims and ending the program. Unfortunately, the program caught on to them and had mostly cleared out the facility by the time the group arrives. Here, they realize how underprepared they were. Not only was the facility much larger than expected, but the amount of victims was staggering. Our character comes face to face with the boy in the broadcasting room, and while alive, the boy has been horrifically mutated, looking more akin to a monster than a human. In panic, Julia shoots the boy, and they flee, leaving him for dead. Although our character's not so sure he really died. Sometime after this failure, the group disbands and the program begins targeting our character, ransacking his apartment, and possibly blasting him with AT waves. Eventually, we return alone to the facility, hoping to find evidence and possibly the boy. Here is where things get muddy, as in the game, we do seem to find the boy, but according to this cassette tape at the end, our character, the narrator, didn't find him here. I feel this either has something to do with the AT waves affecting our character, or perhaps the character simply wanted us to see the boy, and as the person who created this game, chose to insert them in as part of the game, perhaps. I in fact feel like most of the dreamlike sequences, if not all in this game, can be explained by either AT waves causing hallucinations, or simply how our narrator chose to design the game to get his point across. Because, in universe, this is part of an ARG where this character, released the game. Either way, before leaving, we decide to torch the facility, only finding Carol's hair afterward. Our character now forced to live with the idea Carol was alive in the tunnels and he didn't check. He vows to dismantle the program one day and releases this game. And that's Rome. Well, mostly. This is a pretty condensed explanation. I didn't bring up every tiny little tidbit and clue from the game. And from what I understand, Rome is tied to a French ARG, which I would love to explore, but I don't really speak French. So I'm sure there's some missed details regarding all that stuff, and things I may have missed in the game. But overall, I believe this is the story of Rome. And if this game or this video enticed you at all, you should absolutely go check out Rome over on itch and support the creator. According to the game page, it's not a completed work after all, so there might very well be more to explore in the future. Whew, alright, finally done and into the awkward outro section. This was a lot of work compared to the other few deep dives, so I hope it is, received well despite, being a game and not like an analog horror series, despite how similar they are. And as I said earlier, if you are at all interested in Rome, you should check it out. I will have the page linked in the description so you can get there easily. But yeah, more than anything, for the people that do make it to this point, I'd like to know what you thought and if you liked this comparatively to the other deep dives. Thank you to anyone who sticks this one out. Really, I do appreciate it. And, stick around for the next one. For now, that's it. Peace.